This is Greening of the Great Lakes. Here's more with your host, Kirk Heinze.
Well, virtually all the news surrounding the Trump administration seems to center on the Russia investigation, health care, and more recently, immigration. But what about matters related to the environment, which are not being much covered in the media? Well, with us is Susan Sadler, an attorney with extensive experience in environmental law and a partner in the law firm of Dowda, Mann, Mulcahy, and Sadler, which is based in Bloomfield Hills. Sue, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's start with some overarching environmental themes of the Trump administration and how they might compare to the Obama administration.
It's a significant departure from the themes and goals that we found within the Obama administration. If I was just to tick off some of the big ones right off the bat, and we can narrow down on some of these, but there's obviously a drive, and you see these in the budget, and we see these in the priorities being set by the various environmental agencies. And when I speak about agencies, I'm including, obviously, the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Interior, and Department of Energy, who together, I think, put together a large body of environmental law. There's a drive to really shrink that pool of employees, for example, at the EPA level. There's an attempt to get 3,000 of its 15,000 staff to accept early buyouts. The next big issue is seeing what we can do about curbing regulatory expansion. Trump very much ran on shrinking regulatory requirements, especially those burdens placed on industry. And a variety of techniques have been employed in that effort. The budget is shrinking, as indicated, and there's various budget bills that are pending at the House level that at a minimum, I think you're going to see some sort of 6% reduction in EPA's budget. I think you're going to see even more emphasis on the scope and expertise of agency scientists and consultants, and a move towards removing certain members of the agencies, especially those holding certain positions regarding climate change, and we can go into that more later. And when in doubt, there's a desire to move all regulatory decisions to the state or have active state involvement in the establishing of regulatory priorities. I think there's even a move to explore opportunities to make money, especially at the Department of Interior. They are reviewing federal lands and opportunities to open those up for economic and leasing opportunities for energy exploration. Climate change, obviously a huge issue. It's a huge issue in the budget. Someone has said that, in essence, when Trump did his first budget, he moved and looked through all the budget line items, and anything that had a phraseology that suggested that project had an underlying climate change initiative, those items got line items stricken out in that first budget.
So you mentioned budget. That's one way that an administration can exercise its priorities. But in terms of executive orders versus legislation, we certainly haven't heard much going through the Congress. So a lot of this is being done by executive order as well?
Correct. Obama came in just in his last 6 months of administration. I think he had approximately 14 significant Obama rules that were in the last 6 months. And the position of the executive branch has been that those are all up for grabs and review through a simple majority process. It's an obscure rule called the Congressional Review Act that allows a new administration to look back at the prior administration and reconsider their regulatory positions. And that's all up for litigation, as much of these decisions are. So executive orders have had a significant role on establishing priorities, and they've also established directives on where money is and is not going to be spent within these agencies.
Well, Sue, you mentioned litigation, and that's going to keep you busy. My guest is Susan Sadler, an environmental attorney with a law firm of Dowda, Mann, Mulcahy, and Sadler based in Bloomfield Hills. What are some, for those of us who are concerned about environment and climate change and some of these other issues, waters of the Great Lakes, air quality, and all of the other things? I mean, what are some challenges that the Trump administration may have with respect to getting some of these measures through?
Well, initially, I think people believed that executive orders could be issued, regulations would move quickly, and then there's a very active body, and money has been floating into many what I'm going to just collectively refer to as clean groups, such as Sierra Club, Environmental Defense Fund, Center for Biological Diversity, and they are litigating in many of the courts these actions and trying to prevent the delay in implementation of many of Obama's air regulations and other programs that Trump is trying to set aside.
Well, let's take one that's near and dear to home, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. He initially proposed, or the administration proposed, line iteming that out, killing the funding entirely. But there's been tremendous bipartisan pushback on that request, and it looks like, at least for 2017, that money is restored, and there's going to be a big fight in 2018.
I think that's true, but one interesting point that is being also, even for those programs that are being protected, such as the Great Lakes Restoration, there's a question of if ultimately EPA's staff is so significantly shrunk and there are budget cuts, saying yes to a program without the staff, someone put in an interesting term, it's as if you allow for the purchase of the fire truck, but you let the fire department go. So what is that staff, lack of staff, going to mean for implementation of these programs?
Yeah, and then one thing we haven't touched on, and I know it's a little bit outside of but it was certainly tangential, funding for research.
Well, absolutely. I mean, funding for research was definitely a line item that was stricken from Obama's first bill. Obviously, the Congress has put some of this back, and they're drafting the budget. But I think one of the interesting things you're going to start to see is line items for research and availability of money in maybe some sciences efforts that are contrary to the climate change initiatives of Obama. Department of Interior, Ryan Zinke and Scott Pruitt, they're trying to develop it's going to be crazy, but they're pursuing a program. It's called the Red Team, Blue Team, and they want to publicize a large climate change debate and bring together experts that do not believe in man's impact on climate change or diminished impact, and a blue team, which is very much that original science support that came out of the Obama administration.
Well, I mean, most of us don't have any problem with debating issues, but they're going to have some difficulty finding experts in the scientific community who question human-induced climate change.
Well, I think that's true, but I think it's also true that there is some natural criticism of the process that it begins to look like, and they love to raise this, that it's almost a reality TV, and it just doesn't lead to the kind of scientific debate, but it becomes personalities.
Sue, we talked about these things, and again, in the media, these are below the radar screen in many cases. Where can our listeners go to get more information on some of the legal dimensions and policy dimensions of these environmental moves by the Trump administration?
Yeah, there are some very good resources, but I would suggest it is absolutely a moving target hour by hour. As you think a decision is made with all the appellate division and Court of Appeals reviews on these actions, I like to look in. The Hill website runs a very ongoing tracking of EPA and energy issues. That is a great, almost daily resource. Real Clear Politics has a very good subsection on energy.
Well, I encourage, it's, as you say, it's a moving target, as are so many things in this administration. But Sue, thanks for the overview, and thank you for those sources our listeners can go to track some of these environmental moves. I've been talking with Susan Sadler. She's an environmental attorney with the law firm of Dowda, Mann, Mulcahy, and Sadler. She's a partner in that firm, and it's based in Bloomfield Hills. Sue, thanks so much for your time. And
it's going to be fascinating watching this progress.
Fascinating to say the least. Thanks so much, Sue.
MLive Media Group is a Greening of the Great Lakes partner. To read Kirk's blog and to hear our show archives, please visit mlive.com/environment.
This is Greening of the Great Lakes with Dr. Kirk Heinze. We'll have more in a moment.